So today we're going to be talking about transforming the organizational learning experience through innovation and technology. And I think it really comes at the right time, this discussion, because technology and people are merging in ways that are fundamentally changing the way we conduct business and the way people work. And it's going to be more important than ever for leaders to really drive change and drive learning to align with business strategy and really make sure and help organizations stay relevant. So let's start our discussion with talking about what is at the core of all that, and that's our workforce. A workforce that is now highly multidimensional, highly multi-generational, and operating in the gig economy or the Uber economy. You know, more and more people want to work on a freelance basis, on a contract basis. They don't really want to be tied to one organization. They're more entrepreneurial, and they're operating in a highly digital economy now. So let's start off by talking about some of the trends that we're seeing around that. And we're going to start with Robert. Robert, tell us about some trends that you're seeing around this.
Yeah, what's interesting about the digital economy is that it's gotten so specialized because you can have any information you want anywhere in the world at any time, that nobody can be a generalist anymore. So what's happened for our workforce is you have to be specialized, and your specialty is only needed here or there. It's not needed all the time. So we're getting to a place where we only want to hire specialists when we need them at a moment in time for their specialty. We're getting away from one person knows everything. So that's part of what's true for us in public relations. In fact, if you could put up that digital disruption slide, I think that's really useful data for us to be thinking about. What you'll see is the digital economy has affected every part of the world. Now, I must point out that I'm in media, we're in media and public relations, and you can see that we're about to go crazy because we used to be able to talk to journalists on behalf of our clients, and then journalists would write about our clients. Now, we're 24/7 talking to everybody in the world and trying to listen at scale to everyone in the world. And that kind of disruption means our workforce has to be learning all the time. Now, as a learning person, that is both a blessing and a curse. The blessing part of it is that we used to be kind of a nice-to-have function as learners, but now we're a have-to-have function. Business really cannot succeed without constant 24/7 learning about everything changing all the time. The curse of that is, how do you get people to learn every day something new about what just changed somewhere globally? So what I would say, just to finish this up, is the gig economy is here to stay. We're all going to be working as specialists one way or another, and we're not going to be able to keep people full-time in offices. We're just going to have to work digitally, which, by the way, fits pretty well with the digital economy.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Jean, what's your take? What have you been seeing?
Yeah, so we get the opportunity at Cisco to work across all kinds of different industries and verticals, and a lot of the work that we do is consult with customers on what does digitization mean, what does it mean to you and your business or your operation, and then how does that impact everything, including your business models and the way it impacts the workforce. And the interesting thing is when you talk to CEOs or any of their top leaders, what they'll essentially tell you is, very much to Robert's point here, is that digital disruption has created, in some ways, great opportunities, but in the same respect, it's created huge challenges for organizations, because what it means is that any organization in any industry is being challenged now by different incumbents from other industries that are out innovating them. When we talk about the Uber economy, it's really about this idea that you can just through a technology platform come in and not have any drivers, not have any relationship with customers yet, and yet put in a platform in place that provides so much value suddenly overnight that everybody wants to use it, everybody starts gravitating towards it, and it simply turns the taxi driving business, on its side, right? Takes that whole business model, shifts it on its side. So when we talk about digitization models, these are really changing business models that by definition change the workforce. And it doesn't just change one part of the workforce, it changes every part of the workforce. And what we tell people is, it's going to impact 90% of jobs. And how it's going to impact 90% of jobs is going to really require that everyone have some amount of technology knowledge, no matter what you do. If you're in sales, marketing, HR, finance, IT, engineering, you're going to have to do things differently. I'll give you an example, and just to lead off what Rob was saying, in the world of marketing, 70% of all marketing now is being done mobile and online. It's not being done through traditional models anymore. So organizations, no matter who you're trying to reach, particularly if you're trying to reach a consumer audience, you've got to now use all those social digital channels as your number one way to try to reach them. And then you have to figure out how do you keep your customers engaged over those channels so you don't lose them. And then how do you take the moments that you have in those channels to create a new action? Well, that takes a whole different skill set than what you might have today. And likewise, if you're a teacher, right? You look at what's happening with Khan and what Khan's doing to the educational systems as an overlay on top, right? In some ways he's a hero. In some ways he's really creating a lot of fear and certainly in doubt in the school systems, because they're wondering, well, what does that mean for me? Does that mean teachers are no longer going to teach? And it's not so much that teachers aren't going to teach, but they're going to teach differently. They're going to have to use different types of tools and techniques. They're going to have to be more mentors versus teachers. It's not about standing up in front of a classroom anymore. It's about letting people learn at their own pace and then being able to help them work on the challenges, and it's going to get to much more to project-based learning. And so on the corporate learning side, what that means is that no matter what industry you are, you're going to have to go from buyers of talent to builders of talent. Most likely you're going to have a lot of contingent workforce, you call the gig, the gig economy, but right now average is about 40% of the workforce now is temp. Doesn't mean that they're going from job to job to job, but it does mean that what's happening because of the different changes in the required skill sets, many people are opting, and I know IT is a big proponent of this, right? Many people are opting to hire people on a temporary basis for the types of work that they're just experimenting with until they get to see, where they're going. And once they understand where they're going with it, then they start making the more formal investments in those people and bringing them on board. But there's always going to be this need to have now a more flexible, versatile workforce, and you're going to need to be able to tap into resources anywhere, any place, any time. And if you're going to do that, and you're going to, and 80% of the equation is reskilling who you have versus, all net buys, because there's no way you can afford to go out and buy all that talent overnight. So that means all of us are going to have to be in the people building business. We're all going to need to do that. We're all going to need to do it well. We're all going to need environments that will allow us to do this in a new and different manner. And, it's definitely changing the whole paradigm of what we think about as learning. And learning is, 80% of learning is what you do in the job every day. It's not going to a class anymore. So we really like to think about it quite differently in how we build up our workforce.
Mm-hmm. Now, Addie, I know things probably work very differently at the United Nations, given that it's a governmental body. Has the gig economy impacted the way work happens at the UN versus at a for-profit organization?
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. Last night I was working with my two 9-year-olds, and they asked me a question, which was, how many moons does Uranus have? And I thought about that, and I don't know how many of you know the answer to that. But my dear friend Siri knew the answer.
Yes.
And now they've learned not to ask mom, but ask Siri. I think I'm getting less love. But something interesting happened, right? 20th century, we had 2 world wars. We had a Cold War. We sent a man to the moon. We had Elvis. But most importantly, we had the internet. And the internet changed the world. We went from a physical world to a connected virtual world. We went from Homo sapiens to Homo mobilis to connected sapiens. And that means something very different to everything. It's not only learning, it's about the economy, it's about the environment, it's about the way we connect to each other as humans. It's all changed. But we're still stuck in that physical world. We still have classrooms. And I think schools and classrooms are the last physical space, and we have books, wonderful things, but it's the last physical space left. I think we are really moving to this virtual world. And it is disruptive, and I think, as Jean mentioned, it's good and it's bad. It has positive and negative. And I wonder sometimes whether we have the sophistication to understand the implications and the change that it brings to all of us. So yes, from a UN's perspective, the world has changed tremendously. And it's brought, and technology has created that change. And on the positive side, when you look at the healthcare, when you look at education, being able to have remote learnings, lots of girls, over 50 million who can't go to school because they're just girls, being able to teach them basics. Healthcare, remote access to doctors. I mean, you look at all of that content, knowledge, information that we can give globally. What does that mean in terms of human life? It's drastic. At the same time, we look at that and we say, what's the side effect? What's the negative? What is the impact? Because we deal with the impact of technology, which could be negative, like e-waste or child trafficking in the deep web, which is part of the technology. How do we learn from that? So there's a lot of good and bad, and I do think that focusing on and moving away from this physical space is really critical for us, and to focus more about what is learning is in the virtual world. Thank you.